Good morning slash afternoon to you people. I thought I'd do a little video with me for this lesson. So that picture of me in the bottom corner down here, wherever it is on one of your screens, you'll be able to see my face, which I thought might be quite nice for some of you, because you have seen different people for a while. You've been stuck in your homes, hopefully, for the last 6 weeks now, which is a long time. Anyway, I thought I'd do this to try and get us back into a bit of a routine, and we'll go through these questions like we normally would. So your first job then is to name 3 parts of a plant cell not found in animal cells. You should then go through the other 4 questions on here. I recommend you following our normal routine, so doing the date, the title, and the starter, like you normally would do in your paper, on your books, or whatever you're doing this on, as then you'll get yourself back into the routine, and then you'll get better at sitting through these things. I recommend you pause the video when you have a go at these questions instead of leaving it running, because I'm going to go through the answers and you're not really checking your memory if you just listen to me going through the answers. So have a read through, see if you can remember them, try and write down what you think and tick off as you go along what you have got correct. I'm going to pause for a second. I'm going to let you carry on, let you pause me so you can have a go at these questions. Great. So the 5 questions, we'll start at number 1, obviously. 3 parts of a plant cell not found in animal cells. I'm going to go through all the different parts of the cell instead of just naming those 3 extra parts, just so you can remember all those different parts as well. I'm also going to go through what I do, so it's a bit of extra information from me for you. The 3 parts of the plant cell, 3 parts of an animal cell you need to know about are the nucleus, they are the cytoplasm, they are the cell membrane. The nucleus is where the DNA is found. This controls what's built inside the cell. It controls what the cell does. It controls basically everything about the cell. It's the instruction booklet for our cell. DNA is. So the nucleus we refer to generally as the control center of the cell. We also have got the cell membrane, which is going to allow things into and out of the cell. We also have got the cytoplasm, which is where all the reactions happen. These are present in both the animal and the plant cells as well. So they're both things you could mention. If you're asked about what's in both of them, it's those 3 things you should be talking about. In terms of the plant cell, extra on top of those 3 things, the plant cell also has the chloroplasts, which contain chlorophyll, that green pigment we've talked about before, which allows it to absorb sunlight for photosynthesis. We also have got the vacuole, which is where they store things like cell sap, water, and other stuff like that, so they can use it at a later time, and also waste products can be stored in there as well. And finally, the last part is the cell wall. Some of the plant cells, like the palisade cell, have rectangular structures, and this cell wall allows them to hold that structure and keep it so they can stay in the right shape. The 2 things you can have on top of that, but these are only visible with the electron microscope, are the mitochondria and the ribosomes. These are both present in the cells, but they are very, very small and would generally not be listed here, but they are both present in animal and plant cells. The ribosomes are used to build proteins, and the mitochondria, which is question 2, a lot of people here say the powerhouse of the cell, and this is not the phrase you should be using. It's worth 0 marks in your exams. Mitochondria is where respiration happens. So this is where energy is released through that reaction from glucose and from oxygen being mixed together. So mitochondria are really, really important for our cells, and those cells that need more energy should have more mitochondria. 2 parts of a light microscope. You could name any of the following things. You have got eyepiece lens, which is obviously where you look through. You've got the objective lens, that spinny lens we've all had a look at, or you've all had a look at and had to play around with various different magnifications on it. You've got the stage and clips. Slides go onto this. They're not part of a microscope, but you can add a slide on there. You have got the base. You've got the light. You've got the neck of the microscope as well, and the 2 focusing wheels, the fine and the coarse focusing wheel. Question 4 is, why are electron microscopes better than light microscopes? And you're looking to mention the idea that electron microscopes have a higher resolution. So if you think of your 4K TVs compared to non-4K TVs, 4K TVs have a higher resolution, so your image is much more crisp, much more clear. You can see things in better detail, whereas light microscopes, not as good an image which you get from those. They also, for electron microscopes, have a much higher magnification, so you can zoom in more with these, and you can see things more clearly when you have zoomed in as well. The word magnification is much better here than the word zoomed in. You would not get marks for saying zoomed in. So your keywords here are magnification is higher and resolution is higher. Make sure you're using those in any answers you write down. We add dye to cheek cells and look at them under light microscopes, because if we didn't add dye, those parts of the cell that we're looking at would not be very easy to see, and dye makes them much more visible. Great, so you should have had a go at those 5 questions, should have written down on your sheet, and I'd recommend just for your own memory, you should be writing those out as we go along as well, because writing stuff down does make it more memorable. I recommend you spend time doing that. Okay, so these are your objectives then. You're going to state how your body stops pathogens from entering, you're going to describe how the immune system works, and you're going to explain how platelets and goblet cells help fight off those diseases using diagrams to help you. Again, if you have any questions about any of this at any point, email me on Teams, and we can go through these questions in more detail as a whole class. Great. Off you go. Fantastic. So the next thing you need to do is have a go at this question you can see up here. Think about, look up and list some ways that the body protects you from pathogens getting into the body. So how can your body stop those things entering it? Think about the coronavirus, all the things you heard about it. How is your body preventing that getting inside? Because there are things you are doing that are protecting you. Write down a list of anything you can find. Again, pause the video in a few seconds once I finish talking. Go and look up, write down anything you remember, and think about those things. You spend 5 minutes doing this. You should then explain how each one does stop the pathogens getting into your body as well. That's really, really important. Pause the video, have a look at those things, and then we'll carry on and go through the answers. Great, you should have paused the video, and now we'll go on to the answers. Okay, so the different things you need to know about for the body are the following. So first of all, you have your skin. This acts as a barrier, and some secretions that you have on the outside of your sweat, for example, are antimicrobial. They kill off those microbes. They stop them getting into your body. You also have your hairs in your nose, which are there to catch things entering your body as you breathe in. And then you have, obviously, bogies, which then build up and you can pick out or they fall out. And this is you removing that dust, those bits of dirt that you don't want getting into your body. We also have a mucus, which is secreted by something called goblet cells in your trachea and bronchi. These secrete that mucus, and that traps the pathogens as they travel down your windpipe. You then will cough to bring that mucus up, which is what you get when you end up with like phlegmy coughs. It's really common in smokers because they get lots and lots of this build up because the body's constantly making it, and there's lots of tar in there as well that you're also coughing up. There is also cilia in the trachea and bronchi. These are little hairs on the sides of those pipes, which pulse all the way up the side when you're coughing to try and push that mucus back up out of the throat, so you can get rid of it, spit it out, or whatever it is you need to do with it. The stomach also contains acid, so if you do swallow anything that you don't want inside your body, it can kill that off. If anything does get into that can't be killed off and your body thinks that needs to be gotten rid of, then you are going to throw that up pretty sharpish as well. Finally, when it comes to getting cuts on your body, your blood contains things called platelets. Now these platelets build up where you have any cuts or anything in your body. There will be sending platelets to those places in large amounts, and they will form wherever that cut is, wherever that leak is in the bloodstream, and they will form there in large amounts, forming a blockage or a blood clot, we call it. When they dry out, they then form scabs on the outside of your body. These stop pathogens from entering the blood. Interestingly, if you get too many platelets in your blood, you can get blood clots in places where you don't want them, and then they block the travel of blood through your veins or arteries. Just interesting facts for you to know about. Yeah, good. So please write down, make sure you know how many of those you got right, how many of those you missed. But those are the important things you need about how your body stops pathogens from getting into it. They're all really, really important. Okay, so if those pathogens do manage to get past any of those barriers, so through your nose, through your skin, all those different things we've just talked about, they're going to come across one of these different methods of your body stopping it in your immune system. Now, the main parts of this you need to know about are the names of those two white blood cells, the lymphocytes and the phagocytes, but all these words are important for you to be able to talk about and where they come from. So I'm going to give you 10 minutes to go spend some time researching and finding out what these are and what they do for me, please. So the white blood cells, lymphocytes, phagocytes, antibodies and antitoxins, please. If you finish those within 10 minutes, please explain how they stop the spread of pathogens inside the body as well, not just what they are. Off you go, pause the video. Pause me. Right, so White blood cells then are the immune system. You'll have heard of red blood cells before. They are carrying the oxygen around with hemoglobin and all those different things, whereas white blood cells are solely for the fighting of disease. There are two types of white blood cell you need to know about, the lymphocytes and the phagocytes. Each one works ever so slightly differently. We'll start with phagocytes because it's an easier one. Phagocytes fight off disease by engulfing and destroying. They wrap themselves around them, they take them inside, they basically eat them, and they destroy them. The wording you need to use here is really important in your exams. Engulf and destroy. Yeah, they take them inside their bodies and break them down. Engulf and destroy. The other type of white blood cell you need to know about is the lymphocytes. Lymphocytes work slightly differently. There's no engulfing with these ones. They are more like bouncers to the body. These ones go around and remember. They've got like a list. They remember the ones that have come before, and they produce the corresponding antibody or antitoxin for those ones that are going to, or that they met before, that they've destroyed. If they've not met them before, they will spend time producing antibodies or antitoxins to fight them off. Now, antibodies are chemicals they can produce to fight off those pathogens. They remember, as I said before, if they've met one illness before, they can produce the same antibody much quicker a second time round. So they make antibodies again and can fight them off. Once you've met something once, you are then usually able to fight it off if it comes back in. And those antibodies are remembered by the white blood cells, which is why they're so great and so useful. The antitoxins is a similar thing, but for poisons produced by plants or animals that come into the body. It's the way your body fights off those poisons as well. So that's that part done. So your next task was to annotate and explain what's going on in the diagrams I provided on the worksheet that you were sent attached to this week's work. The extension for this task is at the bottom left of the screen for you to have a go at as well. So make sure you do that if you don't take 10 minutes to get this done. You should complete the questions explaining how platelets work and how the respiratory system produces that mucus and what's going on in those different pictures. On the next slide, I'll go through exactly what those are. I recommend you pause this before I go through those different things. So the top image then shows a blood vessel. It shows one where there's been a cut, so blood is leaking out of the blood vessel in the first part here, and that's what your label should show is happening. Red blood cells are leaving, and those smaller dots are going to be the platelets also leaving. Now those platelets will build up in that place, and you can see in the right hand image at the top that those platelets have built up and linked those different things together, making a blockage where that cut was. This is the scab, the blood clot. Again, a scab is just a dried out blood clot at these places to stop the blood from leaking out the body and allow it to keep travelling around as it normally would. Whilst that is there, the body is healing, it's repairing those cells that are missing and sealing that hole so it's no longer going to be an issue. That's your labels. You need to say on the left hand side one that cuts there, the red blood cells and parts are leaking out of the body, whereas on the right hand side the platelets are built up causing a blood clot, which will then dry to form a scab to block that hole and allow that to leak out. For the bottom image, you have an image of some goblet cells. Now you can see in this image that we have got this area, which is the goblet cells, and this substance formed here is your mucus that's forming as well. Now that mucus is what's going to catch those pathogens. As well as those things, you can also see on here we have these little hairs, the cilia. Now those cilia are what are going to pulse and push that mucus out of the throat. They sort of wave like this over and over again, pushing it up the throat, and that's all they do when you cough, pushing that mucus up the throat as well. They're constantly waving. When you cough, you're just pushing it up. You're hoping that last little bit as well. If you do have any questions about any of this, you don't understand it, doesn't make sense to you, feel free to email me and I'll point you in the direction of a YouTube video maybe that explains it a bit better than I have there. We'll move on. Final thing then, 6-mark question. I'd like to have a go at writing an answer to these different parts. Before I do that though, I'm just going to very quickly go through with you how to break this question down, as that's what you need to make sure you're able to do here. So your first job is to pick out the command word. Now I'm sure you can see here that our main command word is going to be name. We also have explain here, which is going to be really, really important. Now, knowing what those words mean is obviously the most important thing for you here. So first of all, just name some is a very obvious one, and then explain how they work. We have been through that in today's lesson. You can look back through your notes, but I want you to have a go at writing a 6-mark answer for me, please. Once we've done that, once you've found the command words, we've got to find out exactly what it is we're naming and explaining. So the different ways the body can prevent pathogens from making you ill. We've talked about those different ways today. Now there is lots of different ways. Any of them will be fine. We're looking at a 6-mark question here. So because it's name and explain, you're probably going to get a mark for each one that you name and explain. 3 names, 3 marks. 1 name, 1 explanation, 2 marks. Yeah, so the more you do here, the more marks you're going to get. You will come across your work looking like this, obviously. We've done this before. I'm going to show you how to break down your page to make it so you remember really well how to do your answer. I recommend you, first of all, split your margin in there and make it so that's clearly visible. And then in that margin, you're going to write down exactly what you're going to be writing. So we're going to be putting a name. We're going to be explaining. We're going to name. We're going to explain. We're going to name. We're going to explain. If you break down your questions and then write down in this margin exactly what it is you're going to do, there's no way you can miss out any marks, because you're going to make sure you've written down, have I named, have I explained, have I named, explained, named, explained. Here is all you need to make sure that you do. Now, the names of these things, again, we can go back to are any of those things we listed earlier in today's lesson. We talked about the nose hairs, we talked about the goblet cells, we talked about the platelets building up inside your blood. We talked about those different things. That's what we're naming here. That's what we're explaining. I'm not going to go through those things again because you know those things now. We've looked at them. You've talked about them already. If you do have any questions about any of this, remember, please email me. Please try and note down how many marks you got on this somewhere, because you should all be able to get 6 marks on this question. And if you can't see how to do that again, send me an email, ask on Teams, and I'll spend a bit of time explaining that for you. Thank you very much. I hope you're all well. Don't forget to wash your hands, stay in your houses, and I hope to see you soon.